I made a game that simulates tying knots and used some pretty cool tricks to make it work. Aglet is a game I made in one weekend for the Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam, a competition where thousands of game developers make a game with the same theme. This year, the theme was loop. I thought it would be cool to make a game that teaches you how to tie real-world knots. The game shows you a picture of the knots to recreate, and you control the tip of a shoelace, called an aglet, to recreate the image. Here's how it works. As you move the aglet, it leaves circles in its path. When filled in, these circles are close enough to each other to look like one thick line. To give the string an outline, each circle draws a line on either side of itself that connects it to the next circle. These lines don't perfectly capture the curve taken from one circle to another, which leads to some missed pixels, but I think that gives it a cool coloring outside the lines and crayon aesthetic. At this point, the string will always overlap itself, but knots often require you to loop over and under previous parts of the string. In Aglet, you can press X to swap between going over or under the string. To accomplish this effect visually, I store a list of the order in which everything should be drawn from beginning to end. When you're in over mode, every new circle is added to the end of the list and drawn last. When you're in under mode, the circles are instead added back to the beginning of the list and drawn first, meaning that the other circles cover them up. Now, we've got a pretty cool character controller that we can use to recreate knots, but how can the game tell when the player has tied the knot that's in the picture? I don't want the player to have to move the exact way that the example does. Instead, I just want to know that they tied an equivalent knot, even if the path they took to get there is completely different. Here's what I came up with. Each time the string crosses over itself, the game iterates from the beginning of the string and assigns each circle as part of a segment. Each circle will be part of segment 1 until an intersection is found, at which point all circles afterwards will be assigned a segment number of 1 higher, repeating this until the end of the string when all segments have been defined. Now, a knot can be defined as a sequence of which segments were crossed and whether they were crossed over or under. For example, an overhand knot is a sequence of moving over segment 1, under segment 2, and then over segment 3. No matter how large or small you make the knot, even if you mirror its direction, the game recognizes this as an equivalent knot. That is how I made simulated knots in Aglet. The game ranked number 329 in creativity in the competition, which doesn't sound good until you see that there were nearly 10,000 games submitted, which places Aglet in the top 5% of entries. You can play Aglet in your browser on mobile or desktop at galactical.itch.io. Thanks for watching.